wake up before the sun, commit all your weekends to long runs, and put hundreds of miles into a pair of running sneakers over the course of 4 months, all for one day. And that one day is the biggest race of your life. Alyssa feels like it the morning you decide to wake up and take on 26.2 miles. It's a Monday morning in April, and you're warming up in Hopkinton, Massachusetts. As you approach the start line, alongside 30,000 other runners, you can't help but shake the feeling that just a little over 50 years ago, you wouldn't be able to be here, tightening your laces at the start line of the Boston Marathon. You see, it was only 50 years ago that Title IX had been passed. Title IX is legislation put in place that requires equal sporting opportunities for girls and women in federally funded programs. An incredible milestone and the start of history for women in sports. It was only 5 years earlier than that Kathy Switzer was at the same start line in Hopkinton, Massachusetts, when she was assaulted by the race manager attempting to tear off her bib number and eliminate her from running the Boston Marathon, all because she was a girl. Growing up, my mom would tell me how lucky I was to be able to play sports. My mom was born in 1959 and was 13 when Title IX had been passed. She used to tell me how she was the only girl on her cross-country team but could keep up with the boys. Lucky, I thought to myself. I didn't feel so lucky when I was told girls don't play pee-wee football, therefore soccer was my only option in the fall. And the tomboy in me definitely didn't feel lucky when the only pair of soccer cleats I could find were pink. But I still laced up those pink cleats and joined my very first youth soccer league. That year, there wasn't just an Alyssa on the team, but there was a Marissa, a Melissa, and a Clarissa. I forgot about the pink cleats because I made friends. We called each other Thissas, actually. Youth sports don't just build social connections, but they help improve mental health, keep young children active, and start to introduce important life skills. According to the Women's Sports Foundation, when young girls are deprived of these experiences, they're more likely to have lower self-esteem that can be seen at home, in the classroom, or in the mirror when viewing their own self-worth and body image. I continued to play soccer, discovered my love for basketball, and later picked up the sport of tennis competitively. As I reminisce on those years, they all felt super easy, similar to the beginning miles of a marathon. Lots of smiles as you see your friends and family through the towns of Ashland, Natick, and Framingham. But just like those years as a young girl, the beginning miles of a marathon go by so quick. Before you know it, you're approaching Wellesley and the halfway point. Mile 13. Your heart is pounding and your head has a hard time grasping onto the idea of 13 miles. 13. 13. 1, 3, you say to yourself. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics and the NFHS, 70% of children will drop out of sports by age 13. And girls are twice as likely than that of boys. Girls have 1.3 million fewer opportunities to play high school sports than boys. And it hits me that my mom was 13 when she was finally able to play sports like her male classmates. When I was 13, I sprouted up almost a foot taller than the rest of my friends. And for the first time, I began to feel self-conscious in the body that I was in. I could have been just another number in one of those statistics. Luckily, when I was 13, there was Candace Parker. Candace Parker was the #1 WNBA draft pick in 2008 for the Los Angeles Sparks. She was the first player to receive both MVP and Rookie of the Year in the same season. And 5'10" didn't feel so scary when Candace Parker was 6'4". It was because of female athletes I saw in the media like Candace Parker that made me feel empowered, and I kept playing. In my high school years, I was a 4-year varsity athlete, playing soccer, basketball, and tennis. Being an athlete was a huge part of my identity. It helped me gain self-confidence, learn how to be a good teammate both on and off the field, as well as persevere through life's toughest wins and losses. Those 4 years felt steady, like I was finally in my groove. One foot in front of the other goes through your mind as you roll into Newton Lower Falls. But then you hit mile 17, and there's a sharp right turn at the Newton Firehouse in front of you. For me, my life took its very first turn when I decided to end my career as an athlete and head in a new direction, pursuing an education and a future career as an athletic trainer. This shift brought on its own set of challenges, as do the hills of Commonwealth Avenue. Seeking a career in athletics, you're constantly reminded how male-dominated the field is. Your male classmates are more likely to be seen in the role. You're asked at clinical if you even know what's going on inside during the game, and it's assumed you don't, simply because you're a girl. But just like the slight elevation of miles 18 and 19 that make you want to throw in the towel, you keep your head up and you keep going. That is until you're staring in the face of Heartbreak Hill. Heartbreak Hill is a half-mile steep incline. You may be thinking to yourself, a half mile, that's it? But what makes Heartbreak Hill so challenging is all the miles you put on your body before it. The steepness of the climb feels almost impossible after 20 miles. For me, my Heartbreak Hill was when I was 20 years old. It was the summer before my junior year of college, and I was visiting a friend in northern Maine. A group of us from her hometown decided to check out Small Falls, a local waterfall where you can cliff jump into the cascading water. It all happened in a blink of an eye, but next thing you know, I was tumbling down 75 feet of rock, falling into the depths of the waterfall. The accident left me with multiple lumbar spine fractures, numerous broken ribs, and a broken arm. I was 20 years old, being rushed to the hospital, 5 hours away from home, with no idea what my life looks like next. I was really lucky that day. I didn't hit my head, and although a long road to recovery, I didn't suffer a spinal cord injury, and I would eventually regain my ability to walk once my fractures and other musculoskeletal injuries had healed. It was the days I was sentenced to bed rest afterwards with complete lack of independence that made me realize how lucky one is to be able to move their body, and I had gratitude for my years on the field. My Heartbreak Hill didn't end my race. My injuries had healed enough for me to return to school, continue my education, only further propelling me into my passion for sports medicine. After months of physical therapy, I graduated from a walker to a cane to walking and eventually running again. I graduated college, passed my board of certification exam, and began my career as an athletic trainer. It wasn't much later than that I joined the Beaver community. The road was flattening out and I could finally breathe again. We're in Chestnut Hill. Working with the student athletes at Beaver, I'm constantly inspired. But ever since my first winter season here, there's always been one team in particular that's caught my attention, the 13.1 Project. For those of you who don't know, Beaver has a half marathon training team. Typically, we start the season with a group of students that say, I'm not really a runner, but I'll give this a try. And after the 12 weeks of training, you see an entirely different student in front of you, crossing the finish line at the Hyannis Half Marathon. When I first started at Beaver, I too viewed myself like one of those students who didn't ever look at themselves as a runner. Even growing up as an athlete, I had never even ran an official 5K. And I would check in with the coaches regularly, and without fail, they would always end the conversation with, we'd love for you to join us on a run sometime. It took a couple asks. Who am I kidding? Many, many asks. But eventually I said yes, and I joined my students on my very first 5K in Providence, Rhode Island. It was just a year later I was given the opportunity to run the New York City Marathon. That race, that 5K prior, that 5K before was my only race prior. And I definitely wasn't running regularly following. But I wasn't just given the opportunity to run the New York City Marathon. I was given the opportunity to run the New York City Marathon for the Women's Sports Foundation on the 50th anniversary of Title IX. It was like I was cruising down Beacon Street and I saw the iconic Citgo sign in front of me, and I couldn't say no. I have a lot of gratitude for the Beaver 13.1 team, pushing me outside my comfort zone to pursue a goal I never thought I was able to achieve. Now, as a seasoned marathoner, I have the opportunity to coach my student athletes through the same journey, helping them gain confidence in life and running. I may not be Candace Parker, but I do know that I'm the representation of a woman, both working and competing in sports for my young female athletes. As you run down Boylston on your last 0.2 miles of the marathon, you're so close you can taste it. You hear the crowds roar and you feel a rush of happiness drown your entire body. You're approaching the finish line. But a finish line does not just represent the end of your race. It celebrates how far you've come. It's 2024 and women's sports have come quite the long way. Caitlin Clark, a guard from the University of Iowa, has become the leading scorer in all of NCAA Division I basketball. Yes, that is the men's and the women's. The U.S. women's national team has finally received equal pay to the men. The University of Nebraska women's volleyball team fills an entire football stadium of fans. And now there's the PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League, that creates the opportunity for young girls not to just dream about playing at the highest level of play, but allows those dreams to one day actually become a reality. When you were warming up in Hopkinton, you thought all your hard work and training was for today. But the race of women's sports aren't over just yet. There's still areas we can improve, such as coaching and leadership roles, media coverage, fair pay, and sporting opportunities as a whole. And while I'm so happy for how far we have come, I'm even more excited to see where we go next. And so when I'm asked, I tell all my young female athletes that yes, I'm proud to run like a girl. Thank you.